Welcome back to Pick Up the Pieces, and we are in the pickup kitchen tonight. If you're new here, my name is Stacy, and thank you so much for watching. Today we are going to make some family favorite desserts. We're doing peach cobbler for two. So peach cobbler for two is a recipe that we make from time to time. It makes a small serving of a dessert, and it's really delicious. But if you are a small household or you just don't want a ton of dessert, you want just a little something, then the peach cobbler for two is amazing. I'm also going to make my mom's favorite cookies. They are the Doubletree Hotel chocolate chip cookies. They have walnuts in them and they're delicious. And so we'll make a batch of those as well. So I'm going to get started with the peach cobbler. Now you can use fresh peaches for this, or you can use frozen or canned. We have some fresh peaches right now, so we're going to use them. You certainly can drop these into boiling water and then peel off the skin that way and then chop them up. But I am just going to use a vegetable peeler here, a nice sharp one, and I'm going to just peel the skin off that way. Either way is fine. If you happen to have a lot of peaches on hand and you're going to be making like some peach jam or whatever, you can do a big batch, and it might be easier to use the boiling water method. We have taken advantage of local produce, and we have purchased like large amounts of local peaches and then peeled like a ton of them. And then what we'll actually do is freeze one portion of the peaches for this recipe in a Ziploc bag in the freezer. And then that way in the winter when peaches are really not in season and the frozen ones aren't as good, the canned ones aren't as good, then we can make this recipe all year round. So if you can get a large amount of peaches in your area, do so and take advantage of that. And then, like I said, you can peel and prep a ton of these and just get them ready in your freezer and then have peach cobbler anytime you want. So we are just going to make a small batch today, and I'm going to start with 4 peaches. We need a total of 1.5 cups of sliced peaches to make this recipe, so I'm guessing that 4 might be enough. If not, I have a couple more peaches, that I can peel up, and it won't take long at all. Now, in the meantime, I am going to start making sort of like the syrup that goes with these peaches. I have a small saucepan behind me, so I am going to get that started, and so I need 3 tablespoons of brown sugar, and I'm going to put that in this saucepan. With a 1/4 cup of water, and we are using 2 teaspoons of potato starch. You can use cornstarch. We happen to have potato starch on hand, and that's what I'm using here. And then we're just going to bring that to a boil. And once that comes to a boil over medium heat, we're going to add the peaches and cook them for about 2 minutes. And that will sort of make like our peach cobbler filling, if you will. And then we're going to top it with some delicious like biscuit kind of dough and bake them. And it's just really tasty. We generally serve this with vanilla ice cream. If you don't like ice cream with your cobbler, you can just serve it plain, or maybe with just a little whipped cream on it. So I'm going to finish peeling these peaches. Got 1 more to go. And like I said, if I need more, I've got a couple more, but I need about 1.5 cups of sliced peaches for this recipe. It is a very small serving. It's basically peach cobbler for 2. So you can certainly double or even quadruple this recipe if you'd like to. It comes out great if you double or even quadruple it, but we like to make this sometimes when we just want like a little something sweet. And so it is a nice recipe because it's small and you just have just a little bit of dessert. So all I'm going to do now is just slice these peaches. And if you just kind of run your paring knife carefully down your peach, then you'll be able to just peel off your peach slices. And it's okay if they're slightly imperfect. I try to make them sort of the same thickness if I can, that way they cook evenly. And we're just going to get those in the measuring cup so I can kind of eyeball that I have the 1.5 cups that I need. So there. And it's easiest just to kind of go around and make all your slices. And then if your peach is ripe enough, you can kind of just pop your segments out. I want my cornstarch, water, and brown sugar mixture here to be blended nicely. And so I'm just going to kind of whisk so that my cornstarch doesn't really lump up. So I just whisked the cornstarch with the water and the brown sugar a little bit, and it is nice and caramelized. And so this is what the peaches will go into when I'm done peeling them. I've turned this off for now because I don't want this to burn. And so I'm going to just set this on the stove. I don't know if you can hear that, but we are getting quite a bit of a rainstorm right now. So if you can hear that noise, that's some rain hitting the skylight in the kitchen, and it is loud. So be interesting to see when I edit if we can hear the sound of the rain. So tonight for dinner, we're just having simple grilled steak, baked potato, maybe a little side salad. But we decided we wanted something delicious for dessert. And so we are going with our peaches here. So it looks like, so this is a liquid measuring cup. And to be honest, when you're measuring cut up fruit and it's solid and you're measuring in a liquid measuring cup, it can be kind of hard to gauge how much you have. But I do think that the 4 peaches will be plenty. If you think about it, the peach cobbler for 2 people, it would be like 2 peaches per person plus the topping. And honestly, we have made this before and found that it actually makes 4 servings because we bake it in this dish every time we make it. And honestly, if you scoop out 4 small scoops, you could probably get 4 servings out of it if you wanted to, if you didn't want as big of a serving. So I'm just going to use all 4 of these peaches, but we definitely don't need any more, and they're just going to keep falling on my cutting board. So I wonder if we might be grilling our steaks indoors tonight because it is sort of a monsoon outside. Okay, so this is good. And I'm going to put that in our pan and I'm going to stir it around. And I'm just going to make sure I'm using a low heat. Am I in frame? Okay. And see, I'm just mixing this delicious brown sugar and water and potato starch, all with these peaches, and then they're going to sit here and simmer for a couple of minutes. So once it comes to a simmer, let it simmer for 2 minutes. So I'm just going to wash off my hands. They're a little bit sticky from peeling the peaches, and then we're going to make the topping for our peach cobbler. All right, so our peaches have simmered quite a bit. And they've reduced a little, and we've kind of got this nice glaze on them. I have to add a couple more ingredients. So I'm going to turn the heat off, and we're going to add a tablespoon of butter and a teaspoon of lemon juice. So I'm just going to use bottled lemon juice. You can use fresh if you have it, that's fine. And then my tablespoon of butter. And I'm just going to stir that in. And now this is going to go in our baking dish. And we're then going to top it with sort of the cobbler topping. Now, I will put the link for this recipe in the description box. It is not our recipe. It came from Taste of Home. But like I said, it's one of our favorites. I love sharing our favorite recipes with you guys. And when we find a recipe and we love it, we don't really stray from it. If we're going to make peach cobbler, like this is the one we're going to make. So see, the peaches now look really delicious. They're covered sort of in that brown sugar glaze, but then they also have the butter on them. So this is perfect. They're not fully cooked through, but that is fine. This is going to cook at 400 degrees in the oven for about 20 minutes. If it needs a couple more minutes, it can go up to 25 minutes. So I'm just going to spray our little baking dish here with some cooking spray. Our peaches are going to go in, and then we're going to make the topping and get this in the oven. And I like to get every little bit of that syrup or brown sugar kind of glaze stuff in here. That's like the best part. I don't like to waste any of it. And if you really scrape your bowls or your pans really well, then they're just easier to clean later. Okay, so this is ready to go. We just have to make the topping. Now the topping is a 1/3 cup of flour. We've got 2 tablespoons of sugar, 1/2 teaspoon baking powder, and a pinch of salt in here. That's going in. I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of milk, and it says 4.5 teaspoons of melted butter. That's a little bit more than a tablespoon of butter, so just a little bit more than a tablespoon, melt it and get that in there. Then I'm just going to take a fork and mix this up, and see, it's just a very little bit of topping, but again, this is a recipe for 2, so you're not going to make like a massive amount. Like I said, this recipe does double well, or you can make a four times batch if you like, but it's just a little bit of topping. Okay, so that's mixed, and now all I'm going to do is spoonfuls of topping on the peaches, and then like I said, they're going to go in a 400-degree oven. So we have our spoon here. And I just add like tiny little spoonfuls. You can certainly spread them out like a little bit, just kind of flatten them. You don't have to completely cover every square inch of the top with the dough. If you like lots of dough, you could maybe double the dough recipe if you'd like to. But it's completely up to you if you want more topping or less. And so then I do take the spoon here and just kind of spread this a little bit, but it doesn't have to perfectly cover every square inch of the peaches. And as this bakes, it will sort of expand, it'll puff a little bit. So like I said, just kind of get a majority of your top, or a majority of your peaches kind of covered, and it will spread. Okay, so this is going to go in the oven, and we will show you what it looks like when it's all finished. Our peach cobbler is in the oven, and so now we're gonna get going on my mom's favorite cookies. So these are the Doubletree cookie recipe. The Doubletree Hotel sometime, I don't know, within the last couple of years released their recipe to the public, and it is a winner. And we love the texture of these cookies. So 2 sticks of butter, no surprise. No surprise that the cookies are delicious if they start with 2 sticks of butter. And I like to scrape every bit of butter off of these butter papers. So that's gonna go in my mixer. I'm just gonna get the rest of this butter too. And this is just room temperature butter. I left my 2 sticks of butter on the counter for a couple hours, and it is perfect consistency now to whip with the sugar. So the Doubletree cookies, and I'll link the recipe in the description for you, are great because they're like kind of crispy and chewy, and they're big cookies, and so they're just absolutely delicious. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with like a regular chocolate chip cookie, but these are like amped up and they're amazing and delicious. So had 2 sticks of softened butter. We're going to add 3/4 of a cup plus a tablespoon of granulated sugar. we're going to add 3/4 cup packed brown sugar. This is brown sugar that I make homemade, and I will show you guys how we do that in an upcoming video. So our sugar and butter, both sugars and butter have really blended well together. You want them whipped for like that 2 minutes to really combine them and get some air in there. And now we're going to add eggs, vanilla, and some lemon juice. So we're going to add 1/4 teaspoon of lemon juice, and it's just the tiniest little amount. I have 1/4 teaspoon. Okay, 1/4 teaspoon. It is literally just a teeny drop. But don't skip it because it really does something to this recipe. I couldn't tell you the science of it, but I'm just saying it does something, and you don't want to skip the lemon juice. I'm adding 2 eggs. They can be added all at once. And vanilla, which I always measure with my heart. So 1 1/4 teaspoons or whatever that is. And so now the eggs, vanilla, lemon juice get blended for about 30 seconds until combined, and then mix again for 2 minutes until light and fluffy. Our eggs, vanilla, lemon juice now blended for 2 minutes, and they're nice and fluffy. You really want your mixture of butter and eggs and all of that and all the sugars really to be this light color and very fluffy, because it helps to give you the texture in the cookies that is so amazing. So I'm just scraping this down once again. And now we're going to add flour. So we have 2 1/4 cups of flour. We have 1/2 cup of old-fashioned oats, so not quick cooking oats. Old-fashioned or rolled oats is what you want. We've got a teaspoon of baking soda, a teaspoon of salt, and a pinch of cinnamon. And again, I know like it might sound odd to put lemon juice and cinnamon in a chocolate chip cookie, but I'm telling you, they're so delicious. So we're going to add our oats. And I'm going to put the flour in last, but I'm going to do a teaspoon of our baking soda. I didn't want to dip my teaspoon that had baking soda all over it in my salt, so I just grabbed another measuring spoon. So teaspoon of salt. It is good to have multiple sets of measuring spoons and measuring cups, especially when you're doing multiple recipes in a day, because then it's less dishes. And so a pinch of cinnamon. And then we're adding our flour. And so I'll scoop in about 1/2 of this flour and give it a little mix, and then put the other 1/2 in so that I don't end up with flour exploded all over the place. So our cookie dough is almost completely mixed, and I don't want to overmix it because I do believe it affects the texture of the cookies. So I will add my nuts and my chocolate chips and give it another mix, and then it should be perfectly combined. So we need 1 3/4 cup of chopped walnuts. I keep my walnuts in the freezer. If you have nuts like almonds or cashews, any kind of nut, even peanuts, if you keep them in your freezer, they will keep longer for you. Nuts have a very high fat content in them, and that is what causes nuts to go rancid. If you keep them in your freezer, then they will keep much longer for you. And I always buy them in bulk like I do everything else. And so you don't waste them if you make sure that they are frozen, because they will stay very fresh in the freezer for much longer than they would just open in your cupboard. So that was 1 3/4 cup of walnuts, and then I'm doing 2 2/3 cup of chocolate chips. And that's probably about 2/3, so there we go with that. And now I'm just gonna let this mix together. So I will scrape all of this dough off the paddle and make sure that it's completely mixed. I will then use my cookie scoop to get it on cookie trays, and I will show you how I do that in a second. Here is our completed peach cobbler. As you can see, it is all bubbly, and even though I did not perfectly spread that topping from corner to corner and edge to edge, it did a nice job of spreading in the oven, and so you do have some little edges where it's just fruit, and then you've got like your nice cobbler in the center. So if you like a little less cobbler, you scoop from the side, and if you want a little more, man, you just go for that middle section. But this is gonna cool, and after dinner, we are going to have this with some ice cream, so I'll show you what that looks like. Our cookie dough is all set, so I mixed in the chocolate chips and the walnuts, and I've made sure that, you know, I've got everything as evenly distributed as possible. I like to bake on cookie sheets lined with parchment. I do also have some of those like silicone Silpat mats. Those are great too. I recently got some of these pre-cut parchment sheets, and I like them better. The silicone mats are great, and I don't mind washing them. However, it's sometimes just nicer and easier when you're cleaning up to just be able to discard of your parchment sheets in the garbage. So I'm also using a cookie scoop for my cookies. You could use a spoon, you could use a spatula, but if you really want even cookies that are all the same size, that are gonna cook at the same rate, you wanna use a scoop. And for this recipe, I use a level scoop, not a heaping scoop, and these are a good size cookie. They're pretty big. Now these cookies bake at 300 degrees for about 20 to 23 minutes. And so I start with 20 minutes and I check to see how they're doing. And if I need to go a little longer, I will. Also, after 10 minutes, I will rotate each tray and then switch shelves in the oven with them so that they get even baking. Now, I do have a double oven, but I've got some potatoes baking in the top oven. So I'll probably cook 2 of my trays in the bottom oven and 1 in the top. I had been baking my potatoes at a higher temperature, but I just lowered the temperature of the oven to 300. And because I have 2 wall ovens, I can kind of get these done faster. Like I said, these cookies bake a little longer than a typical cookie recipe. I feel like some cookies cook in, 7 to 12 minutes, but these are larger cookies and they bake at a lower temperature for longer, but they're totally worth it. So I'm just gonna scoop a level scoop, and I'm gonna leave them mostly in this shape. I'm going to press them down just a tiny bit. Now, you could make this dough and put it in your fridge and bake them the next day if you want. If you're baking them from the refrigerator and they're a little colder, they might need to bake a little longer. You could also scoop out all of your dough, put it on a sheet, put it in your freezer raw, and then when you want just a couple of cookies, you could take just a couple of cookies out and just bake a couple at a time if you'd like. We will bake these. We will then leave them in a airtight container on the counter, and within a couple of days they will be gone. So what I will do is take my spatula and just press them down just a tiny bit to flatten the top a little. You don't want to completely flatten these, and you don't want to crisscross them like you would maybe like a peanut butter cookie. You want these to be just slightly flattened. And this one seems like it doesn't have quite as much dough as the rest, so I'm going to add a little more to that. So that's one tray. Now you can also sort of stagger the cookies a little so that maybe I could get a couple more cookies on each tray. I'll show you how to do that. So I can do one there. And if I have to bake 4 trays of cookies a couple of times, that's fine. I can't remember how many cookies this makes. It said, the recipe says 26 cookies, and that might be right, but it's totally worth it. And if you wanted to double this recipe, you absolutely could, but these are just a really, really nice treat. One, two, three, four, 5. There we go. So now I have 8 cookies on this tray, and I'll fix that tray and add a couple more, so then maybe it's a little less baking time. And I'm just going to keep going and scooping this dough, and then I will show you what they look like when they come out of the oven. All of our cookies are done. I have been letting them rest on the cookie sheet for a couple of minutes before I take them off of the tray. When you bake them, for me today it did take about 23 minutes for each tray to cook fully, and if you try to take them off right away, they'll fall apart. They kind of firm up a little bit as they sit on the tray. So let them cool on your tray for a couple of minutes, and then just scoop them off onto your cooling racks. Once they are completely cool, then you can just put them in your airtight container. Set them on your counter. If you're having people over, you might want to just put them on a big plate and let people enjoy their cookies. But that is all you need to do. And also, I did not forget, I will be back momentarily to show you our peach cobbler with some ice cream on it. It is time for dessert, so we're going to dish up some of our cobbler here. So I'm going to put a little extra peaches there. And this is still warm. And then we're going to take some vanilla ice cream here. And that is the perfect dessert. So here are our finished desserts. We've got lots of cookies. A couple have actually disappeared, so I think it was 27 or 25 or something, but anyway, and then this is our peach cobbler, which I think came out great. We're going to enjoy that. It is technically a recipe for 2, but like I said, you can sometimes get 3 or 4 servings out of it. I wanted to say thank you for joining me in the Pickup Kitchen. I appreciate that you are here. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks.